Hi everybody, it's Julie, Kansas City girl in a Colorado world. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. This is Flosstube number 60. It's been about 2 weeks since my last Flosstube, but only a few days. It's hard to know what day is what anymore. It hasn't been that long since I posted my whip parade, but it's been about 2 weeks since I posted a Flosstube update. So I've got some stitching to show you. I don't have any finishes, but I do have some progress on some whips. Whip is a work in progress, WIP. And I have mania plans, and that's possibly why some of you are here, because I don't know about you guys, but I love mania planning videos. So mania, for anyone who has no idea what I'm talking about, is something that happens in the month of May in the stitching community. I'm not going to go into like the whole backstory. If you join the Facebook Stitch Mania, MAYNIA, if you join that Facebook group, you can find the origins of Stitch Mania. But basically, it's become its own like monster. But the original, I believe, I could be misspeaking, but I think the original point of Mania was to start a whole bunch of projects in the month of May. And it has grown and evolved and become basically like do what you want and call it Mania. Some people start 31 projects, one project a day in the month of May. Some people start the amount of projects that are in the year. So like in 2019, they started 19 projects. In 2020, they're going to start 20 projects. Some people do Whip Mania and only work on projects they've already started. You can do whatever you want. And that's kind of the fun for me in watching Mania planning videos, is to see all the different iterations of the concept, and to see, Lindy Stitches is doing Stitch Maynia, where she's doing a much more modest form of participation. So for me, it's fun to just kind of see what everybody's doing. So I am not doing a traditional Mania by any means. I'm much more in the vein of Lindy Stitch's Stitch Maynia. So I will talk about Mania plans at some point in the video. And I've got a little haul. So, oh, and I think we're going to do a book update. I've got 2 books to talk about at the end. If you're not interested in the book talk, you don't have to watch. If you are interested in the book talk, it'll be at the end. This is not alcoholic beverage. Just throwing that out there. Let's do whips. Let's do some whips. So after my last video, I spent another evening working on Not Forgotten Farm, Sisters of the Broom. And I had like one evening working on it when I showed it in my video. Many people have mentioned that Not Forgotten Farm does not have the best photos on their patterns. Their designs are incredible, but the photos are always like a little blurry, a little grainy. So I feel like then when you actually see someone stitch it, it's like way nicer and way better than what the photo can accurately depict. Anyway, I am stitching this on 40 count Picture This Plus in the color Meyer, which is like my new obsession. It's the new like murky for me. I just love it. When I visited Picture This Plus in February, I was just looking through the tables of fabric, and this one caught my eye. And I had no idea what I was going to stitch on it, but I needed this piece of fabric. And then I was looking at what fabric to stitch Sisters of the Broom on, and I was like, I think this is a totally different direction than like what the original was stitched on, but I think it could work. I really think it might work. And actually, I am really, really happy with how it's looking. This is stitched with DMC. It only calls for like 5 colors. No, 4 colors. It only calls for 4 colors of DMC. So this is my progress. So this is Picture This plus Meyer. And here is how far I've gotten with 2 days of stitching. So you can see this pattern will stitch up really quickly. The DMC helps, you know, of course, to make it go faster. And it's a good size, but it's not full coverage. Everything's like kind of spread out. So I do think that it's gonna work. It's gonna look really awesome in the end. I started this on April 13th for my year-long stitch along that I'm doing with Amy Gable's Stitcher. And this is on the 13th of every month, we're gonna do a new Halloween start, and we're using the hashtag Stitch Halloween 13. And I was talking with Amy and I said, you know, I am notoriously bad about linking people I talk about in the description box, as in I never do it, like ever, and I need to. So I am making notes to myself during videos of things I need to put in the drop down box. So I will link Amy's channel. It is Gable's Stitcher. You guys should definitely be watching her. And she has a Mania planning video that she just filmed and uploaded today, and I haven't watched it yet, but I will be. Anyway, I will link her, and then I will link the hashtag Stitch Halloween 13 down below, and that's we're just using that on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram and you want to join in, we would love to see what you're stitching on. And it doesn't have to be a new start, but that's what we're doing on the 13th of every month. So check the description box below to find links to those people and those things I mentioned. Okay, so like I said, I was totally obsessed with Picture This plus Meyer fabric. So over the weekend I was playing around in my stash and kitting up some patterns, well, seeing what if I had fabric that would work for patterns that I have in stash, things I really want to stitch. And one of the things I really want to stitch is, I should use past tense, one of the things I really wanted to stitch was Bendy Stitchy's Rolodex Morning Sampler, which she released at Nashville Needlework Market this March. And I didn't think I had the right fabric for it. But I was playing around, looking around, and I had this leftover half of my Picture This plus Meyer fabric, and I was like, maybe that could work. Like, I think maybe that could work. And so I pulled all the, well, I didn't pull the called for floss because I didn't have it. But I pulled what was close, and it was like, you know what? I really think this could work on Meyer. This is a nighttime sampler, but it is stitched, I believe it's on Picture This plus Wren. So it's stitched on light fabric, but there's a moon and stars up there. It's a graveyard. Like, to me, this is like creepy nighttime. So again, I was like, I think Meyer might work really well for that because it's kind of dark and creepy. So once I made that decision to do it on Meyer and I pulled all the floss, then I just wanted to start it right away. So this was a totally unplanned new start because I love the pattern. I was kitting up the pattern, but I was kitting up like 8 other things that day, and I had no intention of starting this pattern right away or anytime soon, but I got so excited about my bold fabric choice that I had to start it then. Like 20 minutes later, I started this pattern. So I did show this in my whip parade as my final whip, but I did start it after my last Flosstube update. So if you watch my whip parade all the way to the end, you've already seen this. And if not, here you go. So this is Picture This Plus Meyer, and I didn't get a ton done on this pattern, but I do love the way it is looking on this fabric. So I am very happy with how that is turning out. A little bit about this pattern just while we're on. Michelle Bendy Stitchy. We know her, we love her. She's a fabulous designer, fabulous floss tuber. But this sampler is a little bit of like a collaboration with another floss tuber, Rolodex Stitches. So that is why it's called Rolodex Morning Sampler. I will link Michelle and Carla. Carla is Rolodex Stitcher. I will link them below. Let me put a little note to myself. Go check them out. Both fabulous floss tubers, if you're not already watching them. So Carla kind of gave Michelle the inspiration for that pattern. So she named it after her, which is amazing. Okay, what else did we work on? Oh, so I did go back to Mermaid of Salem Bay. I showed this in my last video, and I had, this is a primitive hair needlework Nashville release as well. And I bought the fabric, which is also primitive hair. It's called Pirates. It's a 30 count linen. 30 count linen. It's great. It's wonderful. It's not reflective of anybody's skill as a cross stitcher. This I went gangbusters on, and I've stitched a ton on this since my last update. Because I was actually going to finish it. I had every intention of taking like 2-3 more days of stitching and finishing this, and would have done, except for Rolodex Morning Sampler unexpected start. It dragged me away from the Mermaid of Salem Bay. Sorry. So here is where I'm at on her. Absolute, like, just in love. I'm in love with this. I love the colors that the designer chose. I love the way it's looking on this linen. I love everything. It's so beautiful. And like I said, I did intend to finish it, but I got sidetracked. So, and she's not in my Maynia plan, so it might be a while before I finish her. Just making sure I'm not missing anything. So I am keeping up with my weekly stitch along with Fat Quarter Shop. This is Prim Village. Prim Village by It's So Emma Stitchery, or Lori Holt Bee in My Bonnet. I'm never quite sure which one is the designer. I think Bee in My Bonnet is the designer, but it's put out by It's So Emma. So anyway, this is, this is a stitch along that should be wrapping up. I have the schedule here. It's going to wrap up, June 10th is the last week of this stitch along. So it's been a long one because it started in March, like beginning of March. I've been keeping up, and, here is where I'm at. This is itty bitty because this is 25 count Lugana in oatmeal, and you're supposed to stitch these houses over 2, which ends up being like equivalent to like a 12.5 count. Like it's I mean, it's pretty big. I don't enjoy, oh God, here we go. I don't enjoy stitching on 28 count or bigger. Not because I am this advanced, snobby, I think the word was smug stitcher. Not because of that, but just because I don't enjoy stitching on 28 count. It's just not my preference. I enjoy 40 count most of all. I stitch on every count. I do stitch on 28 count. I stitch on 32 count. I stitch on 36 count. I stitch on 30 count. I stitch on 35 count. I love to stitch on 40 count. I stitch on 46 count. I stitch on Ada sometimes. I stitch on everything. But I don't love 28 count. And so I figured I probably really wouldn't love 25 count. So I am stitching this one strand over one instead of 2 strands over 2. And so that means it's half the size, which means it's teeny tiny. It's going to be about 6 inches by 6 inches when it's all done. This is an 8-inch Q snap, and it fits in perfectly. So here's where I'm at. I do love this fabric. This is Oatmeal Lugana 25 count. I love the color. I love the texture. So doing it 1 over 1 on 25 count is really quite enjoyable. But it's a long SAL. It's a long stitch along. Oh, I'm stitching this with the Aura floss that is called for in the pattern. So it is, I was looking to see if there's a picture of the Aura floss on here, and there's not, and I left it out in the living room. Aura floss is just another form of embroidery floss. It is solid color like DMC. It doesn't have any variegation. I've talked about it in a previous video. I actually really do enjoy stitching with it, but it's different than DMC. It has its ups and downs. It doesn't knot as much as DMC for me. But one thing I will mention, like I said, I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to go into detail, but one thing I've noticed since that video, as I've stitched more with it, is that you do need to use short lengths with the Aura floss, because when I have used a longer length, it literally like disintegrates by the time I get towards the end of the thread. Somebody did comment or message me and tell me Aura floss is a long strand cotton thread. I don't really know what that means, but it is made differently than DMC, and something about the, repeated drawing it through the fabric, it does actually like break down, and it just kind of pulls apart, and I think that's something to do with the long strand, but it just kind of disintegrates. But if I just do like a 10-inch length or so, like I'm totally fine. It's just that at one point I cut a longer length to try to get a little more bang for my buck before I had to rethread my needle, and it didn't work out well for me. So that's really the only negative I have about the Aura floss. Otherwise, I really do like it. I think it looks really good. So there is my Prim Village. Okay, so I think in my last whip, so this ties in with Maynia a little bit. You'll see how in a minute. I decided, in my last video, someone commented to me and they said, because I think I had mentioned like I wasn't sure what I was going to do for Stitch Mania. And somebody commented and said, well, why don't you do like a SAL Mania? So SAL, S-A-L, is stitch along, right? So it's any kind of cross stitch project that you're stitching with somebody else, essentially. In this case, particularly meaning a mystery stitch along where a block is released each month, or there's some kind of schedule and you don't really know what the end product is going to be. You get like a teaser pick to get you started, and then you sign up and then you start stitching and then you get a new release every so often. So somebody said, you know, maybe you should do a SAL Mania and like get all your stitch alongs caught up. And I was like, that is brilliant. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but that is brilliant. So the problem is I have too many stitch alongs that I've started and not kept up with. And so I had to narrow it down. So I got all my stitch alongs out and was kind of like, okay, like what can we do? May essentially has like 4 full weeks. May 1st is on a Friday, so don't, you know, I wouldn't count that weekend. So then the next, you know, the first full week of May, whatever, there's 4. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pick 4 stitch alongs that I've started. And then I'm going to, you know, focus on one for the week. And then the next week focus on another, and so on. And see if I possibly could get them caught up, but mostly just like could get some progress on some of these old stitch alongs. So I did that. I sat down and I picked 4 and I had a plan. And then a few days later, I was like, I totally forgot to include one of the stitch alongs that I really did want to work on, like that I really wanted to work on and get caught up. Crap. Like now I have 5 that I really want to work on instead of 4. What am I going to do? And all along, also part of my Mania plan was that on the weekends, I would allow myself a new start. I would focus on the stitch along during the week and then have a new start on the weekend. And so that leaves like 5 weekdays in 4 full weeks. So I was like, crap, like what can I do to squeeze in a 5th? How can I do this? And then I realized instead of spending an entire week working on the one project, I will rotate the days. So Monday through Friday, I will work on a different stitch along each day of the week. That way I can fit 5 in for the whole month and then still have my new starts on the weekend, and it's wonderful. So I will show you those 5 stitch alongs that I chose in a minute. But this was a very long preamble to show you my last whip, because I picked my 5, I made my plan, everything's great. And then I was like, well, May 1st isn't for another week and a half. Now what am I stitching on? And at first I was like, you know, I'm going to try to get some finishes. I'm going to focus on things that are almost done and get some finishes. And that's great. And then, you know, I had been looking at all of these stitch alongs and trying to narrow it down to 5. And this one just kept tugging at me. And like, I really wish I could incorporate this one, but I don't know how. And I was chatting with Amy, and she's like, well, why don't you just stitch on it right now? Like, you don't have to wait till May and try to fit it in. You have 12 days until May. Why don't you just work on it now? And I was like, there are no rules in cross stitch. I could totally do that. So I got out the Adventures of Alice stitch along, which is a year-long stitch along that is being put on by Cross Stitcher magazine. Cross Stitcher magazine is a UK-based magazine. I learned of Cross Stitcher magazine by looking at the magazine section at Barnes & Noble. And you can also do like a digital subscription, which is what I ended up doing once I realized I wanted to stitch this. So this is the Adventures of Alice stitch along. So here's the overall border. And then here are the 4 blocks that have been released so far. And the border, because I know you guys are going to ask, it's Cross Stitcher magazine. The border is in the February 2020 issue. The first block is in the March. So we've got March, April, May, June. Why is the June issue already out in mid-April? I don't know. But it is, okay? It is. So although the Stitch Along starts with the February issue, the February 2020 issue, it came out like end of December. So it's still like the 2020 issue, or the 2020 Stitch Along. So anyway, this is where they're at. And what I had done was the first block. And I am stitching the border as I go because this border is intense. So I had Alice, and then I had this much of the border done. And so I'm like, okay, I've got like 12 days. I think I could make a dent in this. The first block was some pretty intense stitching, but then the next two were pretty light. So I thought, you know, I could possibly get this caught up. If not, I could get pretty close. Y'all, I got caught up in way less than 12 days. I got all 3 of those blocks done, including the border, in about 5 days, I believe. I am stitching this on Picture This Plus 32 count Belfast linen in the color Legacy, which is just a nice, beautiful neutral, like a golden browny neutral. I am not attaching the beads. That's one thing I do want to point out before I show this. In the border, there's like a million little red beads. I'm probably gonna put those all on at the end because they're gonna get crushed in my Q-snap. I'm not looking forward to doing all that beading at the end, but I think that might just be the best way to go. We'll see. Maybe I'll get a wild hair and I'll put the beads on now. Anyway, I'm caught up. So here it is. It looks so good. I'm loving it. It is extremely backstitch heavy. If you hate backstitch, this is not the SAL for you. Those blocks did go really, really fast. So I'm caught up through June, which is insane, but the next block will come out like mid-May probably. But I have, you know, I'll be focused on other things. So this will be something I hopefully pick back up a little later, maybe in June. Maybe I can stay caught up. I just absolutely love it. I could just stare at it for hours. I'll come in close so you guys can see like the craziness of all that back stitch. I can't wait for like the Red Queen, the Cheshire Cat. I mean, it could go on and on. I actually have, I think I'm going to reread this really soon, actually. I have this edition of the original Alice with the original illustrations. This book isn't like terribly old. I was looking the other day. It was reprinted in like 1993. But I was looking through at the illustrations and I'm like, there are so many options like for the remaining blocks of what they could be. Like this has got to be in there, right? There's just, it's so iconic. So I'm really curious now to see what gets included and what isn't. I mean, the Mad Hatter's gotta be in. So I'm really excited about that stitch along. And sneak peek of book talk, I'm probably going to be reading this. Okay, so those were all my whips. So also a sneak peek of Mania, but I haven't shown you the 5 projects I'm going to work on yet. But I will, but first, let's do some haul. Let's do a little haul. I do have a little, not a lot, just a little. Okay, so Night Spirit Studios has been on fire with freebies. This is the 3rd freebie that she's released. This is the Plague Nurse. Yeah. I definitely 100% needed that. Also really nice is she included this skin color chart on the back. Barely any skin's showing. There's like some right here and then some down here in her hand. But she did include, like, you know, you can use any skin color you like. Anyway, this was a freebie, so you can certainly go find this on her website, Night Spirit Studios. I love this designer, and I felt compelled to buy some patterns. I have bought patterns from her before, but with her releasing these 3 amazing free patterns during this quarantine time, I just felt like I wanted to go support her. So I went and bought some patterns from her Etsy. Night Spirit Studio is the Etsy seller. Oh, I'll link it below. Why don't I just make myself a little note? Night Spirit. So, I want to stitch every single thing she's ever designed at some point in my life. The ones I picked up this time, I got the 3 of Swords, which is a tarot inspired pattern. I just liked it. Another tarot inspired pattern is the Death card. The second she released this, that was like a, yes, I definitely need that. This one is, what is it called? Oh, it's the Saintly Goat Triptych. You can buy all 3 of these individual, but I really liked the way she had them all together. I've been watching a lot of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, so that's all. If you've watched it, this will make more sense to you. And then these were, I remember when she released these, I was like, oh, those are so pretty. I want every one. So this is Winter Mausoleum 1, 2, and 3. I think these are so cool. So there's 1. There's 2. And there's 3. I'm a little bit obsessed with Memento Mori, Tombstone, Crypt. I'm like kind of into all that stuff right now, so you'll see that in a minute. And then I ordered, this is the last of my haul, so like not too crazy. I got some Etsy patterns, and then I placed 1 order, and there was a reason. So I ordered from Cottage Needle on Etsy, and the reason was I sat down to kit up projects, and I was kitting up some Plum Street patterns that I had showed in a previous video. Some old patterns, and I got to thinking, like, you know what, there might be more in this series than the 3 that I have. Let me Google that and see if there's more. I did find more. And then I found that the Cottage Needle was the only person selling this pattern. And so I went to her website and I got, this is Tomb with a View. Let me read it to you. Oh, I love it. It says, "Move on, dear reader, thou treadst over my view, for here I am destined to lay. I've naught to behold but this dirt, dark and cold. 'Tis to be your pleasure some day." Yeah, I needed that. Actually really big though. It's 193 by 153. It's pretty big. So I'm at the Cottage Needle and I'm definitely getting that pattern. And I'm like, you know, maybe I'll be reasonable. Maybe I will just get this one thing. Sorry, I knew there was more to my order. Maybe I'll just get this one pattern, like, and call it a day. Well, I go to my cart and shipping was like, I can't remember exactly, but it was like $4.60 or something. And I was like, for one pattern? I don't think so. No, we need to add some more to this cart. So, so I went and looked at what other plum streets she had, because obviously she has some old ones. Now, these aren't, the thing about the old plum streets is my understanding, and I could be, you know, I could be making this up, but my understanding is that Paulette Stewart of Plum Street Designs, Plum Street Samplers, will reprint old charts if a shop contacts her and asks, I assume. So although sometimes her old patterns can be hard to find, can seem like they, you know, maybe you should pay a lot on eBay for them, I wouldn't, because my understanding is that if you just like ask your LNS, they might just contact her and she'll do a reprint. So this is an old pattern from 2007, but it's, I'm sure, a reprint. And same with this one. This was from 2008. It's called Ghoul. Oh, I love that. And it's charted with MPI. She charted with NPI a lot in the past. And then I found this one like randomly, and I don't think I'd ever seen this before, and I just loved it. It's called Sea Hag. It says, because I know you can't read that. It says, "Red sky at night, 'tis the sea hag's delight, for she sings bonny sailors from bed. In their fixed sleeping trance, they are lost in her dance, yet her crowns are the skulls of the dead." So she's basically a siren who lures sailors to their death. Yeah, I like that. No, I just thought it was a really cool pattern. So I got those, and then I got a fat quarter of the new Picture This Plus in the color Fawn in a 40 count, because 40 count is my favorite fabric, not because I think I'm better than anyone who stitches on 28 count, but just because I like 40 count. I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. I like the way my thread covers. I just like the aesthetic of 40 count, and it's my favorite thing to stitch on. So this is the color Fawn, which is absolutely beautiful, but very reminiscent to me of Picture This Plus Legacy. It is a brownish neutral with a green tone. I'm sure if I actually took a piece of Legacy and put them side by side, they would be different enough. And I'm not upset about it. Like, it's still glorious and beautiful. It just kind of reminds me of Legacy a little bit. And then the last thing I grabbed was these ballpoint needles. I have heard people talking about these, and I haven't gone hunting for them because my impression, for whatever reason, was that the ballpoint needles were going to be like a fatter needle. I like a 28 count petite, or not 28 count, a size 28 petite needle. I hope that's not snobby for me to say. It's just the needle I like to stitch with. But my understanding with the ballpoints was that they were going to be like a fatter needle, like maybe a 24, which I don't like to stitch with generally. So I never really like looked into them too much. And then I was chatting with some local stitchers, and one of them was saying how she wanted to try the ballpoints. And I said, yeah, I think I would want to try them if they came as like a petite or a smaller size. And I was like, you know, I need to go look and see. So while I was at the Cottage Needle, I went and looked, and sure enough, she has petite ballpoint needles. I haven't tried them yet. I actually just got them today. This just came in the mail today. But I will say, they're not like John James size 28 petites, but they're not enormous. I don't know why I'm even showing you these, because I'm sure you can't really see them, but yeah. So I'm excited to give those a try and see what this ballpoint hoopla is all about. But now I'm looking, and the ball has come off of one of these needles. Crap. This is not the Cottage Needle's fault, but I think I'm gonna need to contact her. See if you guys can see that. One of them doesn't have a ball. It looks like it just like broke off, and it's now just a regular needle. And those aren't cheap. They're like $3 something a piece. So I might email her and see if maybe she would replace that. It's not her fault. I'm sure it just happened in shipping or whatever. Okay, so that was all my haul. So, you know, I was pretty good. I was pretty restrained, I think, okay? I'm so defensive. I'm like, it was not that bad. It's not that bad, guys. Okay, so Maynia plans. Maynia plans. Okay. So I've already explained. I'm doing 5 stitch-alongs during the weekdays of Maynia. And then on the weekends, I am allowed a new start. So the second day of May is a Saturday, May 2nd. So I get a new start pretty much right away, like to kick off Maynia with a bang. And then the rest of the weekends, it ends up being 5 weekends. So I get 5 new starts in May. And I'm working on 5 stitch-alongs. So what am I going to work on? Well, the first one, so I'm getting out Letters from Hogwarts. This is a free stitch-along by Cunning Cross Stitch. If you just search it, you'll find it. You know what? I could link it below, but honestly, guys, like, I can't spend like an hour pulling in links for you guys. Just Google it. Cunning Cross Stitch, Letters from Hogwarts. You have to go to the blog to download the pattern anyway. So they are actually, this part has been released, this part has been released, and then chapter 3, which is right here, comes out on Friday, May 1st. I am nowhere near there. I'm still up on the border. This is a piece of 28 count Monaco. Oh my God, the horror. 28 count. I dyed it myself and I love it. I actually very much enjoy stitching on this fabric. So here's where I'm at. Which is not far. It's not, I'm so behind. But that's why I picked this as like a focus for May. Maybe I don't believe I can get caught up, but I think I can do some good. I think I can get somewhere with it. So that's one. And then this is an old stitch along. This was a 2019. Like the rest of these I think are 20. Yeah. Most of these are 2020. This one is a 2019 stitch along. It actually officially started at the end, like towards the end of 2018. It wasn't even the end. It was like September of 2018. So I am very behind on this one because it's done. This is the Works of Jane Austen stitch along by Suburban Inui. And it's an homage to the works of Jane Austen. We've got Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice. Which one's next? Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Persuasion. What's your favorite Jane Austen novel, guys? If you're fans, what's your favorite? Mine is Emma. If you know me at all, that makes perfect sense. I love Emma. I love Emma. And I love the movie Clueless, which is like a modern day Emma adaptation. Anyway, tell me about your favorite Jane Austen, just because I like to know. You don't win anything, just tell me. What I'm going to do, and I'm really excited, is that as I work on each block, I'm probably not going to get very far. I'm going to watch the movies. So like I'm on Sense and Sensibility, and I think I can finish this one. So I'm going to watch the Emma Thompson Sense and Sensibility. And then Pride and Prejudice is next. And so that's obviously going to take me a hot minute. So I'm going to watch the Colin Firth BBC miniseries, which is like several hours. And then I'm going to watch the Keira Knightley, Joe Wright, Pride and Prejudice movie, which is, that's my comfort movie. Carla Rolodex Stitcher asked recently, like, what is your favorite? I can't remember how she asked it. Like, it was for a Stitch With Me. It was like, what's your comfort movie, or what's your favorite movie, or something like that. Or not your favorite. It wasn't what's your favorite movie. It was like, what's your favorite comfort movie? And to me, that is Pride and Prejudice. So here's where I'm at on this one. So I can totally finish this first block and then start Pride and Prejudice. I don't know that I'll get much further than that if I'm only working on it for like 4 or 5 days. But I think I can get a good chunk going. This is a 36 count XJU Designs fabric. It was a fabric of the month in 2018. It's the color Dark Mountain, which is just absolutely beautiful. So there we are on that one. So I am under no like delusion that I am catching up either of those, right? The Letters from Hogwarts is huge. And the Jane Austen, it's not bad. But I'm not going to catch that up, okay? I'm just not. But one that I could possibly catch up, because I'm not terribly behind, is Ingleside Imaginarium. I call this Witches Familiar for short, because it is a long title. It's Kaluna Brightburn's catalog for Witches Familiars. A new piece will be coming out on Friday, May 1st. But here's where we're at so far. And I have January and February done, so I need to do March, April, and then May will be coming out. I am stitching this on a piece of 40 count, my favorite linen. I'm stitching this on a piece of 40 count that Amy gifted to me. It's from Victorian Motto Fabric of the Month Club, which she doesn't name. So it's an unnamed but absolutely gloriously beautiful piece of linen. And this is the overall fabric, so pretty. And here is where I'm at. And these honestly did not take a lot. I think these took like 2 days each. So I could potentially catch that one up. If not totally caught up, I could get close. The other thing to keep in mind is that I'm working a reduced schedule right now. So instead of like coming home from work and having like 2 hours of stitching, I have potential to have many hours of stitching. So although I'm only working on these 1 day a week, you know, I could get 5-6 hours or something like that. It just kind of depends on how I'm going to be feeling. So I could definitely catch that up. The fourth of 5 that I'm going to be working on is the 2020 Linen and Threads Mystery Sampler Stitch Along. A new piece of this comes out on May 1st, but this is where they're at so far. I printed it in black and white because you pick your own colors, so it doesn't really matter. I'm stitching this on 40 count mallow linen because 40 count linen is my favorite. Not because I'm better than all of you. This is being stitched with a DMC variations, color variations in 4240, which is a blurple, purple, royal blue, really pretty. And I'm stitching it, and I've done January and February. Yeah. So I've got to do March and April, and then May will be released as well. And I did start out putting initials in the first block, and then I realized I saw a post somewhere about just how many initials were going to be in there, and I was like, whoa, hold on. So I stopped putting initials in. And when it's all said and done, I'll go back and figure out, like, I might have to rip out the 2 I put in, but I'll figure it out later. But there's a lot. There's going to be like 22 sets of initials or something crazy. I got to think about if I like 22 people that much, and I don't think I do. So, I got to think about that one. Okay. The final stitch along that I will be working on for Mania. And I'm really excited to get back to this one. So this is the Witchy Stitcher Chopping Mall Stitch Along. She just a few days ago released the final piece of this stitch along. So this is not a year-long 2020. This was I think it started in December maybe. It was like a 3 or 4 month stitch along. So this is what the frame looks like. And then she was releasing each store like every 2 weeks or so. It is something about it, I don't know why, but it's just so fun to stitch. Like, I really, really like stitching this. It is on a 28 count Monaco. I stitch on 28 count all the time. It's a 28 count Monaco that I dyed myself. And I think it turned out really good. I wanted like this blue gray, and that's exactly what I got. And here's how far I am on this. The border is quite intense, so I had started on the border, and then I just like skipped down and did the Chucky store. I'm really close to finishing the Michael Myers, so I'm probably just gonna do that, finish that, and then come back up to the border. It's a lot of stitching. I don't believe I will get this caught up like even remotely. But I think I can get some progress on it. I want to show you guys what the final one looks like, because she did just release on Friday. Just so you can see. I'm not going to get there. But here's what the final pattern will be. So really, like, the stores aren't too intense in terms of stitching. Like, the Chucky one didn't take me that long. So that's not the problem. The top of the border is full coverage. So this up here is a lot of stitching. Once I get that done, I think I can fly. So here's a secret. It's not a secret. I don't like scary movies. I don't like horror movies. I have no idea why I'm stitching this. I really don't. I do not watch scary movies. When she released the teaser, I really wanted to stitch it. And I'm really glad I am, because it is very fun. It is very fun. And then I was kind of laughing at myself, because as much as I don't watch horror movies, I've seen well over half of these movies, which is crazy. I'm not sure how I have, but I have. So I feel a little better, because I'm like, okay, I know most of these. There's a few that I'm like, huh? I think my favorite block is, is her name Samara? Is it Samara or Samira from The Ring, which I did watch, and Hannibal Lecter down here in the food court. I did read all of the Thomas Harris, all the Hannibal Lecter books. I did read all of those. And I do love Silence of the Lambs, but I don't really consider that a horror movie. And I will watch that movie, like, to this day, but, like, I'm not watching, like, Freddy Krueger. I'm just not. I'm not doing it. But although I'm having a blast stitching this, and I really love it, like, I'm also like, what am I gonna do with this? I guess it'll go out at Halloween. Like, I don't know. I was talking to Andrea, Stitchy Bookworm. Oh my God, I am linking her below because she is awesome. And she finally posted an update. In my last video, I said she needed to do an update, and she finally did. So, she's stitching this too, and I was talking to her about, like, how in real life, it looks so much better than the pictures. And the pictures aren't bad. Like, I think that the Witchy Stitcher takes great pictures, actually. But it just looks better in real life. And there's a lot of DMC étoile, so it sparkles. So, like, the blood is sparkly. It's just, it looks better. It looks good in the picture, but in real life, it looks great. Okay, so those are the 5 stitch-alongs that I am stitching for Maynia. But what are my new starts for the weekend? Well, friends, let me tell you. It does not correlate at all with the stitch-alongs, so I don't know how I got to this, but I am obsessed with this Blackbird Sewing Club book. I want to stitch every single thing in this book. There are 16 things in this book. Well worth the money. Go get it. There are 16 patterns in here. And I want to stitch all of them. So I was like, I think... so before a viewer suggested to me that I do stitch-alongs for Maynia, I was really thinking I'm gonna do this Blackbird book for Maynia. So my mind was already, like, there. And then I was thinking, like, I'm gonna work on whips during the week and then this on the weekend. And then she suggested the stitch-along, so then my brain went there. This is how we ended up with these 5 stitch-alongs and Blackbird Designs Sewing Club, which neither have anything to do with the other. I'm going to start 5 5 projects out of here. This book also, besides the 16 projects, the same colors are used over and over. There's like a core set of colors that are in almost every single pattern in this book, and then maybe like take away one or add one here and there, but it's the same colors over and over. So I just pulled them. They're almost all weeks, and I had all of the weeks except for like 2. So I think I didn't have Weeks Dye Works straw, so I'm using Ship's Manor Ancient. And then I didn't have a few of the weeks, so I pulled like Color and Cottons for those. So this palette is really pretty. It is a really pretty palette. So I went through my fabric and figured out what I had. And then I picked five patterns based on that. I don't know what order I'm gonna do these, so I really don't. So I'm just gonna show you sometime in May. I will be starting in my garden. There's another picture of this I want to show you before it was rolled into a drum. I think I'm going to leave this one flat. I don't think I'm doing a drum. So I'll be doing in my garden. I'm doing this on a piece of 40 count Picture This Plus Ale, which is a darker brown. Just, not all of these colors are in there, but it's gonna be good. I did pull all the colors and like lay them on the fabric, and they were all working for me. I'm going to do, I'm really excited about this one. I'm going to do the Hollyhocks Were Always There Huswife. This is the biggest one I'm gonna do. No illusions that I'll finish that by any means. I'm going to stitch this on a piece of 40 count X-Jude Design fabric in the color Grandma's Slip, which is like a grungy prim. I think that's gonna look really cool. I'm also going to do the Air of Other Summers pin cushion. I really like this one a lot. I'm gonna do this on, this is a mystery linen, but I'm almost would bet money it's a Lakeside, it's a 36 count Lakeside linen in like vintage light exemplar or something like that. It is a scrap of mystery linen that I got at the thrift store. But it's really pretty and it's gonna look really good. I'm going to start, this is my favorite project in the entire book. This is why I bought the book. Garden Friends Sewing Bag. Stupid story about why this is my favorite. At the bottom it says Hollyhocks. And that makes me think of like one of my all-time favorite songs by a band called Saves the Day, called Hollyhocks and Forget-Me-Nots. This is back in my college like emo punk days. Takes me straight back to the year 2001. So I love it. So yeah, I'm going to do that one, and I'm going to do it on another little scrap of Grandma's Slip from X-Jude Design. I think that one could possibly be like a finish because it's not huge. No promises, we'll see. The last one I'm going to start, and I do think this is a finishable project. It's only 34 by 51. It's tiny. And it's called Summer Flocks. And this one, because it's so tiny, I'm actually going to do it on 30 count and do it over 2. And look at this. I've been holding onto this teeny little remnant of Nikki's Creations 32 count Old England fabric. It's the tiniest little piece. But even on 30 count, this is going to be, or 32 count, this is like 2 inches by 3 inches. It's super tiny. And I finally get to use this little scrap. I'm going to have to stitch this in hand because it won't fit in any kind of hoop or anything. Okay, so those are the 5 projects, my 5 new starts for Mania. So during the weekdays, we're going to work on stitch-alongs, and on the weekends, new start from Blackbird Designs, Sewing Club book. So that's what I'm doing for Mania. Let me know what you're doing. Let me know if you have a video about Mania, because I would love to go watch it. I'm almost caught up on my watch list, so I will be looking for new things to watch. Okay, so that's all the stitching. That's all the stitching. And so now I want to talk a little bit about books. I only have 2 books to talk about. Like, it shouldn't take long, but who knows, because I start rambling and go on tangents. So 2 books I didn't read, but I bought that I want to show you guys. I couldn't resist. I needed like a little pick-me-up. So I treated myself to 2 new books. They're both really big too. The first one is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. If you don't know who Sarah J. Maas is, she's a very successful author. She gets lumped in with young adult, but she doesn't write young adult. Well, that's not entirely true. I think her first series, the Throne of Glass series, did start as young adult, but kind of aged up into a new genre that some people don't recognize as being real, called new adult. Basically like 18, 19, 20-year-olds instead of young adult. But she's very popular in the young adult set. So she has the Throne of Glass series, which I've read and which I loved. And then she has her Court of Thorn and Roses series, which is arguably more popular. This is the Court of Thorn and Roses, and then there's like 3 more books. I have read the first book, and I did like it. I haven't read the other books yet, but I will. So this is a new series for her, and this is adult. And that's all I know about it. I literally don't know anything else. I have enjoyed her work so much that I bought this like sight unseen. I didn't even read a synopsis or anything. I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna need to read that. I might as well buy it. So, book haul. And then I did have to also buy the sequel to a book I talked about in my last Flosstube. I had read a book called Wicked Saints by Emily Duncan. And this is the sequel to that book, Ruthless Gods. I really, really enjoyed Wicked Saints, so I needed this book. This book is huge, though. It is 530 pages. It's hefty. So that was my book haul. I'm not planning to even read either of those like immediately, but I still love like getting new books. It just makes me happy. So what did I read? I did read 2 things. My reading has definitely slowed down. I read more than 2 things, actually. I read like a couple of like trashy, like paranormal, like thriller things on my Kindle, but like not even worth talking about. Okay. I read both of these books with Andrea Stitchy Bookworm because we buddy read like most of the time. We're actually taking a break right now. Like she's gonna like read whatever and I'm gonna read whatever, and then we're gonna like buddy read something again in a week or 2. But we both read, she had already read this, but wanted to reread it. She had an advanced reader's copy of this. This is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Most famously, the author of a book called The Night Circus. You may have heard of that. This is a hotly anticipated new book from Erin Morgenstern. So Andrea read it like early last year because she had it came out in November, I think, but she had an arc of it, so she had already read it. But she really wanted to reread it. And as I read it, I could totally see why she wanted to reread this book. I think this is a book that you would definitely get, like you can absolutely 100% totally enjoy it and love it the first read, but the second read, you could pick up so much more. So this is one that I'll eventually need to reread as well. This book is really hard to describe without possibly like spoiling it like crazy, but to me it was like a love letter to writing and to readers. Like it was stories within stories within stories. The main character is like a voracious reader. He loves literature. And he finds himself falling into a story that he's read, basically. It's, like I said, it's really hard to describe. Even if you had read this book and I wasn't afraid of spoiling anything for you, and I was just trying to describe it, it would be very difficult. But the best way I can think is stories within stories within stories, but they all come together in the end. I really loved this book. It is absolutely my favorite book I've read this year, but it's, it's only April, but it is by far my favorite book that I've read. It was really, 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 really good. Like I said, a love letter to lovers of literature, like just little like Easter eggs in there. A lot of it is set in a library. A lot of it is set in a magical library. Everything about this book centers around the art of telling stories and writing stories. And so it was almost like a guarantee that I would like it, but it was actually just beautifully written, amazingly like plotted and teased. It's just little crumbs of the mystery, like constantly like keeping you going. Like you're like, how is this all coming together? Like, what is this person doing here? And why is this person here? And it all does tie together in the end. And I found it to be a very satisfying conclusion for me. But I don't know how other people have felt about that. But I liked it. I liked the ending. And it's really, really well written. And I do like really highly recommend this book. It is an adult fiction. I know I read a lot of young adult and recommend a lot of young adult, but this is just an adult book. People are screaming outside and I have no idea why. Okay, so that was a rave review. The other book that Andrea and I read that was also one I really, really enjoyed was the sequel to Carry On. This is called Wayward Son. It's by Rainbow Rowell. So Carry On was Andrea and I's first buddy read. And it was so wonderful. It was like such a magical, fun book. Like both of us were like excited to read it and had heard it was good. And we both like just fell in love with the story. It's hilarious. It's fun. It's angsty. It's just like such a great book that we both just loved. And then the sequel came out. Oh, someone's doing one of those like drive-by birthday parties. That's what it is. Have you guys heard about those? Like because none of us can go anywhere. You just like, you put balloons out and decorations, and then like everybody drives by and like celebrates the birthday person or whatever. Like that's happening right now outside my window. So anyway, this came out in, I think, October or November, and I just like, although I was absolutely obsessed with Carry On, I didn't want to read it right away. Like I just wanted to like hold on to it and save it. Like I needed to save it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not reading it until like, I think I'm going to read it in January, like the post-holiday, like letdown. Like that's when I'm going to read this book. That didn't happen, but, during all the quarantine and everything, I was like, this could be a good little treat. And Andrea was like, yeah, I'm down. Let's read it. So we did. It does not have quite the magic of the first novel for me, but it was still so good. I forgot how funny Rainbow Rowell is, the author. Like, she is hilarious. I very rarely literally laugh out loud when I'm reading a book. You know, I'll like be amused and I'll kind of like chuckle to myself a little bit sometimes, but like this book, like snort laugh out loud. It is hilarious. The characters are just so special. Like you just get so attached to them. So the premise of Carry On is, it started as like a Harry Potter fan fiction. Rainbow Rowell had written a book called, I think I have it right here. Yeah, I do. So she wrote this book called Fangirl about, and the protagonist in this book writes Harry Potter fan fiction. I actually haven't read this yet. So the lady's writing this Harry Potter fan fiction and apparently like features heavily in the story. And then Rainbow Rowell like kind of got really into like this fake fan fiction she was writing as this character, and like decided to write a whole book up and actually make it a real thing. So it is definitely like Carry On definitely ties into Harry Potter. But that's intentional. Like if you're going, this is just a Harry Potter ripoff. Like no, it really is. Like she does make them different enough. It's not just like Ron, Hermione, and Harry like ripoffs. It's not. They're their own people with their own magic, their own rules of magic, all that. But it's definitely like a chosen one magic story. So, Carry On is set at this magical boarding school in England, and Wayward Son is what happens after graduation. And she says, I don't know if she says it in here, but she said somewhere, like, what happens after the chosen one defeats the bad guy, saves the world, like, and goes off for their happily ever after, like what happens then? And so this book is about like what happens next, and it's not a happily ever after. So it's really interesting to see like this character that's actually still really struggling to find his place and his identity. And he has a love relationship that I don't want to tell you about if you plan to read Carry On, because that will be a spoiler. So it's kind of about like, now what? Some people didn't like this book as much as, or I shouldn't say as much as Carry On, because I liked Carry On more than this book. But some fans really didn't like this book. And I think it's because they don't ride off into the sunset and have their happily ever after. They're struggling. They're having like real relationship issues and trouble communicating. And then of course there's also like this subplot of like a magical adventure that they have to go on. So, I can see why some people maybe weren't happy about that, because it wasn't that happy ever after. But I thought it was really real and really important to like explore that. And I really did like this book. I did like Carry On more, but that was such a special book for me. So this was probably never going to be able to live up to it. But it was very, very good, very funny, very angsty, which I did not see coming because of like the relationship issues that the main character is having. There was a lot of angst. And I live for that angsty romance. It's like, that's my thing. So I was into it. So I would highly recommend this series. Start with the first one, obviously, which is called Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. It is a young adult, but there are a lot of F-bombs in that book. It is such a good book. I highly recommend it. Also, really quick, these books are fast. They are about 350 pages, big font, wide spacing. A lot of chapters are like not even full on chapters. They'll be like one page. So you can read these really quickly. And we did read this really fast. We read Carry On in like 2 days. This one I think was like 5 or 6. Okay, that's all my book talk. I rambled like usual. I really thought this would be a shorter video, but certainly not. It's about my usual. So, all right, next time you see me, I'll have some updates, some Maynia updates. And like I said, let me know what your plans are for Maynia, just because I am curious. And if you have a video about your Maynia, you can't really like link it because YouTube will think it's spam. But you could just say something like, hey, I filmed a video too, and then I'll know to like click on your name and go find your video. So let me know what you got going on, and I will check back in with you soon. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.